technology being used in Mass Effect 3. So I want you to look at this and think about what's happening in this clip.
Place her in protective isolation. Recommend gentle approach. Krogan slow to trust.
I don't need her trust.
I'm Commander Shepard, Alliance Navy.
Are you here to kill me?
Of course not.
We're here to take you home.
Why? What am I to you?
You're the Krogan's last hope.
You're the future of the Krogan race. I'm fighting for that.
So I don't know if you could quite make out exactly what's going on there, but so the idea here is this is a branching dialogue like we see in video games all the time. A character says something and then you can say A or you can say B. And normally you just pick that with the controller. But in this game, instead of picking it with the controller, you use your voice. Now this presents a strange challenge to the designers. Because if I have these two options, A and B, and I'm going to read them out loud, now it's a question of what should happen on the screen for the game. Because if I say, you're the Krogan's last hope, and the character on the screen says, you're the Krogan's last hope, that's dumb. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I say it and then the character says it. It's repetitive and weird. But if I say it and then the character just stands there and does nothing, that's also weird. But you look at the choice that they made in Mass Effect. I say something and then the character finishes my sentence, right? They elaborate on what I just said. It's almost like the two of us are a team, right? Like I start something and then they finish it. I start something and they finish it. And you almost wonder when this character goes away, would the two of us start to talk about them? You know, like, wow, she seemed really angry, right? And we could have this little conversation about it. And that seems a little weird because that character who's finishing my sentences is my avatar. And isn't that weird? Aren't I the avatar? And if I'm the avatar, why am I talking to the avatar? Aren't I always just the avatar? But the answer is no. We already have this. We already have games that have cutscenes. We're used to our characters talking in a cutscene. If I control Mario and I jump and I run, and then we get to a cutscene and Mario has a conversation with somebody, we don't think that's weird, right? You know, there's a moment where like, yep, me and Mario are the same person. And then there's a moment where I step back and Mario is his own person, right? And how weird would it be if it's a cutscene and Mario starts to talk to me? That wouldn't be that weird. And that's exactly what's happening here. And I bring this up because right now we think of avatars as, oh, that's just me. But really there's something more complex going on. And so I'm going to argue that as we start to get voice recognition working in games, that we're going to see something very different. That instead of talking to non-player characters most of the time, I think we're going to talk to our avatars. I think the most of our talking is going to be with our avatars. And actually, avatar starts to become the wrong word. I start to use the word companion. I start to think of them as virtual companions, a character that sort of travels with you, where you'll have a conversation, you'll control them still, but then you'll also be talking with them. And this is important because I think this is going to be the center of video game narrative once this technology becomes possible. When I was a boy, I went on a road trip with my father once, and we're driving out in the country and we're just sitting quietly. And suddenly he says to me, if you had a friend who was a ghost, how old would you want them to be? And I said, I thought about it and I thought, well, I'm 7 years old. I thought, I guess I'd want the ghost to be my age so that we could play. And that's what I would want. And he said, yeah, okay, but you're going to get older and the ghost won't. And I said, oh, I didn't think about that. And he said, yeah, that's why you have to think about these things. Okay, so that was kind of weird, but in terms of video games, this is something important to think about. We grow and change over time. And it's something we're going to expect from our video game characters. Once we start to talk to them and have a relationship with them, we're going to expect them to grow and change with us. Okay, so let's look back at like, how are we doing with these different things? So what's the future of video game verbs? If we can actually get to the point where the computer can understand what we say, what we mean, and how we feel by looking at our emotions and hearing emotion in our voice, everything's going to change with video games. That will be a huge change in the power of video games to tell stories because the characters will seem so much more alive. Now the question of tragedy. Does the presence of new video game characters let us tell more tragic stories? Does anything change there? And I'm going to say, yes, absolutely that's true. Because right now in video games, something goes wrong, I just rewind time. Imagine that you build a relationship with a character over maybe, say, I don't know, maybe 10 games over 10 years. And this character has stayed with you and changed with you and remembers everything about that history. And then something happens. And say that character dies and is gone forever from you. And those memories are erased. Think how powerful an experience that would be. Or maybe even not something so drastic as that. Maybe the character has a fight with you and says, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And they leave, right? And they're not going to be in the next game for you because they're mad at you. Think how that would feel and how powerful an emotion that would be. I think characters with memory are going to give us the ability to tell powerful, tragic stories in a way that we haven't seen before. Does this help with the question of unity? In some ways, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. But I guess what I feel like is if we're going to have characters that are ongoing, that stay with us, the story doesn't exactly have an end anymore. And so the problem of the beginning and the end being connected, that is less important because it's an ongoing story. So this gets to the question of, well, so does this mean we're going to get to a place where someone becomes the Shakespeare of games? And I think that, yes, we're going to move there, but I think it's going to be different than people expect. Yes, I think the Shakespeare of games will be someone who tells stories, a teller of tales. But I think more than that, they're going to be a crafter of characters. The person who creates games that have lasting emotional impact for centuries is not going to be so much that they created plot lines. It's going to be that they created characters that moved us in important emotional ways. And here's one thing to think about. If we're going to move to this realm where we're talking to characters in this way, I think we're not just going to have them in games. I mean, because if I'm talking to Mario in games all the time and he goes from game to game to game, why should he stay in the games? Why not have him live in my phone? And I'm like, hey, Mario, what's the weather today? And we could have a conversation about the weather. He could tell me about that. He could tell me about anything. And if this character is here with me, moment to moment, through my whole life, think how well they're going to know me. And think about the strange problem of what should happen to this character when I die. When I die, what do we do with my virtual companion? Do we have a virtual funeral? Should it die too? You could do that, but I think more likely we're going to give our avatars, we're going to give our virtual companions to our children. We're going to pass them on. And consider a future where the best way to learn about your ancestors isn't to look in a book or look online. It's going to be to talk to the virtual companions that spent their whole lives with them. And that might sound strange, but it's going to happen. I don't understand how it cannot happen. It seems like That is just the way things are going to have to go. And this raises some questions. If these characters understand us so well because they're with us every minute of every day, what is that going to do to us psychologically? If we spend more time talking to virtual characters than we do talking to real people, is that bad? Is that unhealthy? And maybe it is unhealthy. But on the other hand, the idea that there is someone who is always there for you and always cares about you and always wants to help make your life better and is there to support you, there has to be something good and powerful in that. And if we create these characters the right way, even though there may be some danger of it being unhealthy, it may be that we can create a lot more good and do a lot more for the future of mental health by giving people an ongoing support system. And so I'll leave you with the ending of the movie Labyrinth by Jim Henson.
Goodbye, Sarah.
And remember, family, should you need us? Yes, should you need us? For any reason at all.
I need you, Uncle.
You do.
I don't know why, but every now and again in my life, for no reason at all, I need you. All of you.
You do? Well, why didn't you say so?
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm happy to take some questions if we still have time.
好 ，OK， 不好意思，我们这边在直播上有碰到一些问题，但是接下来的话，我们就进入 Q&A 的环节。
That's a really interesting talk, Jesse.
Oh, thanks, Lucien.
I got a couple of questions, but I would like to let the audience go first.
Sounds good.
But seems we're still waiting for the question. I was like curious when you start talking like you meant like a different medium have like a different way to see that, right? Like such Shakespeare, his books, people still want to read it. It's the old way they want to read, and you put a picture of a Final Fantasy VII. That is really interesting because that is a classic game in the history. But recently he just remade, like a year ago, he just remade, but that was interesting. Like people still very anticipate that game's coming again because like the new generation people, they still want to play what is the classic game in the history. But they completely changed the game mechanic in the way we play as before, because the old way was like the old way we play was like a turn-based RPG, but now this is more like an action turn-based RPG.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting. Like, can we really do that as the old way would do the games? And then leading to my thought is like, oh yeah, Diablo 2 just recently remastered. But people was like, this is not a current people playing style. So
yeah, that's no, because the it's complicated because the nature of the way people play changes over time.
Exactly. So yeah. I want to ask you, is like, is a game can really play as it is before, because like the player is like following the current new trend, and they were trained by the current new games. The way they play is different than the way we played before. but the books is different, and it's a different medium. How can we see that in the future? Like, is that really a possible way we can play the game as all way we play?
Well, I guess I would say it depends on the game. I guess I'd say is some games, yes, some games, no. Certainly we know games like chess and Go, well,
right.
They haven't changed in a long time, right? Same game, hundreds of years, right? Look at Tetris. People keep making new kinds of Tetris, but Tetris is still Tetris is still Tetris is still Tetris, right? It hasn't changed. Probably people will play Tetris in 100 years. And of course, that part's very abstract. The question is I guess the important thing is the question of novelty. Because one of the things that's appealing about a game is, oh, there's something new, right? And that often makes people fall in love with something like, oh, I love the thing. But when it's not new anymore, sometimes they don't care about that part of it as much anymore. And so we have to separate out the part of it that's exciting because it's new and the part of it that's exciting because it's powerful and engaging. Because over time, the new part will fade away. And if there's nothing left, then the game goes away. But like in the case of Final Fantasy VII, there were some game mechanics that were new, but now they're not new anymore. But then there were other things that were powerful. Those parts have stayed as they've adapted it forward. So it's a question of kind of how do you adapt it forward? And it makes us focus on the question of what is emotionally powerful versus what is just a novelty, and you have to separate those.
So it feels more like the things you deliver is even more abstract, level keeping longer. It reminds me like the movie Interstellar, right? You say that the love can transparent in a different dimension, but physically things cannot. So it's more like when we deliver a game, we deliver experience for a player that can keep passing to generations, because people will love Final Fantasy VII because the Alice. I'm not going to say that. That's a huge spoiler. But the ending story, that is the most touching part for everybody.
Yeah.
So that was passing down.
Yeah.
But the visual, that's a physics. That's like more physical things can continue changing.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. I love your analogy to Interstellar, that notion of of abstract and concrete versus sort of emotional versus physical. I think that's a strong connection, and that makes sense. Right. And I think what I think this should encourage all of us to do is when we create things to look at what is the part of this that might last. What is the part of this that is going to be so valuable that people will want to hand it on and to keep it going?
Yeah. Okay, let me translate a little bit. It's too much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We have to talk. So, 我刚刚问了老师一个问题，就是 Jesse 一个问题，就是说，因为他刚刚在一开始的presentation， 可能大家没有看到，我们之后可以再去 review 一次。他在一开始 review 的 presentation 的时候，他有说，在不同的媒体的之下，譬如说莎士比亚的书，现代人还是喜欢用以前的方法去读这本书，或者是电影，我们还是喜欢用一些以前的方法去看这个电影。就像同一出戏可能有翻拍过，但是我们还是喜欢去看旧的版本，因为那会更让人觉得比较心动，或者是让有更大的 emotion， 就是更大的感情寄托在上面。那他就问到，他在他的演讲里面就说到，太空战士7是不是有可能，因为游戏是一个新的媒体，游戏有没有办法让以后的人也是一样照着以前的方法去玩？所以我刚刚就提出了太空战士7，它是一个非常经典的东西，当时它是一个历史性的游戏，那后来在去年它也被重制版也出了，但是它的玩法已经跟以前完全不同。那这两个比较之下，书可以从以前的方法再去重新读一次，但是游戏为什么却没有办法？所以 Jesse 我们刚刚讨论到最后一个是说，其实游戏它所传达是一个 experience， 就是它是一个体验的东西。或许体验是可以永远留存在不同的世代当中，但是比较具象化的东西，它会随着时间而改变。就像我们 刚刚有提到一部电影叫做 Interstellar， 叫做星际什么我忘记了 ，Interstellar 中文叫什么？就是诺兰拍的那部电影，然后就是他会说，那个他爸爸跑到了太空上去找另外一颗地球，然后又回来找他女儿，发现他女儿变了好多年之后或长大。但是那部电影他最后在讲一件事情，就是爱是可以穿梭时空的，因为爱是一种，对，谢谢有人说叫星际效应。星际效应这部电影它里面讲的是爱情，不一定是爱情，就是爱这件事，母爱、父爱、父女之间的父子之间的爱情是可以穿越时空的，但是这个东西并不会受到物质的影响。所以我们刚刚就讨论到一个结果，是不是因为这部电影是不是因为这样的感觉，所以我们在做游戏的时候，在做游戏的时候，我们更需要强调我们需要传达什么事情在游戏当中，这样子这个游戏在过了不管多少年之后，还是那个东西体验的东西，还是永远会让人悸动的。这是我们大概刚刚聊的结果。那我们现在来看第一个 Q&A 问题好了，就是大家最近非常非常红的问题，就是他对于 Metaverse 的看法。Yeah, so Jesse, this is the first question. This is a really hot topic recently. Especially Facebook changed their name. It's became Meta. So people were asking about what's your opinion or what you thought about the Metaverse, because you are expert in the virtual reality and the volume space.
Yeah, so
area.
People mean very different things when they say metaverse. And I think the right way to think about it is to think about the connection between our body and our physical world and virtual worlds. You want to go ahead, Lucien? I don't know.
I'm writing down. So 所以他刚刚说，他一开始先说，他说对于 Metaverse 这件事，其实每一个人对于 Metaverse 这件事情的看法都很不一样。那他需要说的是从 physically， 就是从你感官上，或者是说从物质上去做不同的解释。
Yeah, because the things that are going to matter are when we create virtual reality worlds, they are powerful when they involve our body. And when we create augmented reality worlds, they're powerful when they involve the real world objects and distances and locations. And so the power of the metaverse is that when people talk about this idea, they're really talking about how are we going to connect the physical world and the virtual world. And what Facebook changing their name to Meta is a very important statement, because what they're saying is that virtual reality and augmented reality are more important than social media. And so that's a big statement.
Okay, translate. So 所以 Jesse 说了，对于 Metaverse 来说，就是对于这件事情来说，最重要是什么？我们从 VR 跟 AR 的角度来说好了，它会让它会去 empower， 就是它会去让身体更沉浸于所谓的互动当中。VR 是着重在让身体或者是你的 physical 更沉浸在这个虚拟世界当中，但是 AR 是相反的。AR 它更着重的是在于是你如何跟这个世界做连接，所谓的虚拟世界跟现实世界做连接，或者是说虚拟世界的 location 就是位置如何跟现在的位置做连接。那这两件事情最重要的回归到 Metaverse 来说，就是Facebook 把名字改成 Meta， 其实最重要的事情，他们是希望跳脱出只有 social media 这件事，他们也致力在发展 AR 跟 VR， 所以他们同时要把这两个东西合并起来放到 social media， 他们希望可以打破一个只有 social media 存在的 Metaverse 的意思是这样。Yep. Is that? Hi, Jesse.
Oh, no, that's all I have on that.
That's all. That's all.
Questions?
Yeah. So what do you? So the next question is also related to Metaverse. So how you feel the game design the art of the game design, especially this book, or what do you think about the game design can influence, or what's the challenge for game design to do the metaverse things? Like for example, game is very about sensational experience, and sometimes we need to like put enough content to satisfy like players like emotion or their mental needs. So how you see game design being challenged by the metaverse?
I think honestly, in some ways, game design gets easier when we think about the metaverse, because video games have been very abstract, right? I have to imagine that I'm playing the game. But when you start to do VR and AR experiences, you're really doing them. It's a much more real experience for your body. And so as a result, they can feel much more satisfying.
OK。他说其实对于设计师来说，尤其是做游戏设计这一块来说 ，Metaverse 反而是一个对于设计师更容易去发挥，或者是更容易去得心应手的一个领域。那他的观点在于是说，因为做游戏本身就是一个非常抽象的东西，它是一个非常 abstract 的东西，因为它不是一个具象化，在生活中我们并不会发现。所以当我们在做 VR 或 AR 的东西的时候，我们是把这个抽象化更加的具体起来。所以你在玩 VR 或 AR 的时候，你可以透过手机看到恐龙，因为这个抽象的东西会在你现实中出现，会让你看到，或者是说你被封锁在你被包在一个虚拟世界的时候，你会觉得，哎，我的手真的就是一个战士的手，或者是我是一个兽人的手，那会让你的抽象更具象，然后让你的身体更容易去体验这件事。所以反而是当我们在设计游戏的时候，设计师更能把这个抽象带到 Metaverse 当中，因为 Metaverse 最重要一点就是他希望把 social media 或者是 AR、VR 各个层面的东西全部包在一起。所以当我们在设计这些事情的时候，其实我们已经照着原本的方式去走了。I think it's like what you meant is, we are already doing something to fulfill the metaverse in the future, but we are just doing in a different way. We're doing like things being abstract, like only on the TV or only on the screen, but it's not actually we can feel physically or sensationally.
Yeah, I mean, if when I play a fighting game with a game controller, I'm just using my thumbs. I have to learn a language. I have to learn how to push these buttons. But when I do a fighting game in VR, I'm fighting. I'm really doing it. And all of everything in my body that knows that, like all of the emotions in my body that are connected to me really doing something are now part of the simulation. So in a way, the metaverse is more human than traditional video games.
Exactly. 所以他说，在像他玩一些动作游戏啊，你只能用摇杆在玩，所以你没有太大的连结性，或者是你的心灵并不会得到很满足，你顶多就是觉得哦，我看得很爽。但是当你在玩一个 VR 的动作游戏的时候，你就会觉得哇，我的四肢跟着在动，那我就会更投入，我就会更带入这个感觉，所以你在心灵层面的满足会更强烈。对，这个体验 ，Yeah, this feeling I totally get it when I play super hard VR game. It was like I'm Jackie Chan. I'm totally Jackie Chan. Yeah. So next question. What's the next question? We can go next question. Okay, this one is a little bit tough one.
Looks like it.
A lot of video game they are like trying to design, especially like a Western video game currently. They're trying to be more inclusive or more diverse. So that when they're creating the character, especially like a female character, they are creating more female character, or they give more like a second gender or things about the character. But in terms of this kind of situation in Asian, especially in Japan, it's very rare to see that. Just so not many characters have like emphasizing on diversity or inclusive. So what do you feel about this in the future? Will there be less and less female character? Because when the Last of the people mentioned that, when the Last of Us 2 was out, people was keep judging or like lots of opinion talking about the Abby, yes, Abby, this character, or Ellie, these two character. So, but that is not happening in Asian actually, like especially Japanese game. So, what do you feel about this kind of character design?
No, this is a good question, and I think there are two sides to this. One side is, what does the audience demand? And we definitely see in America, the audience wants more diverse choices. America is a very diverse country, and people want to see themselves in the game. But then the other side is, who is making the games? And as that changes, you're going to naturally see more diversity. If it's only men making games, you're going to see mostly male characters. But as more women are kind of welcomed into the game industry, we start to see more diversity. So it's partly, what does the audience want? And then it's partly, who is making the games?
所以他说，其实这个问题，我看到蛮多人留言，这个问题其实蛮具挑战性的。那我觉得这个问题也并不是说非常危险，而是说，我觉得在于他刚刚也说到，这个问题在于是，我们要去看什么样子的人会去做这些设定角色的人，或者是说什么样子的人会去参与这样的工作。那我们在业界其实他说在国外其实就会常常看到越来越多女性的工作人，他们就会去创造出一些比较不同的内容出来。那反观有些游戏比较多男性在玩的游戏，可能创造出来就会比较多女性角色。所以其实整个业界在不断的慢慢改变，因为有一些地方会越来越多的女性去参与所谓的开发，那我们渐渐就会看到有不同的东西出来。所以其实他要说的意思比较像是说，我们要反观是什么样子的开发者想要去创造什么样子的体验。So I just do a conclusion. It's more like we have to see what kind of developer working on what kind of project, what kind of things they want to deliver for players actually. Because now it's more diverse people coming to this industry. So when we create things, it's not just like what we have before. It's very, very stereotype, but now it's more and more people, more opinion coming. So we should be more inclusive for all kind of audience to be in this industry.
Yeah, I think it is very much the responsibility of game developers to try and invite a more diverse developers into their teams.
Exactly.
It's very important.
Yeah, 所以他觉得非常重要的是，这是一个对于开发者的责任，应该是说，我们应该有一个责任是说，让更多不同，不管是性向、种族、肤色，或是任何一种人，来去参与这个开发。那我们这样开发出来的东西，就可以更符合更多人的需求。那他觉得这是一个开发人自己必须要有的一个责任。Yeah, I think this is enough for this question because this was a very abstract question, and I think this is not just, it's a huge difference in the cultural side. So, yeah. Okay, the next question is like someone want to ask you like about how can you control a character so in the story of the game, usually we need to give a character, the avatar or the main character, a very good reason or motivation to continue the story. So what do you feel about differences between you telling story as a first-person view and the third-person view? So some of the game like Monument Valley is you play as a third character. You're seeing the sister and the mother, or I don't know. But some of the game, there's no, like for example, like a Monkey Island. So you are the first person. You're clicking and finding things on that island. You are the first person. So what do you feel like storytelling part differences between these two?
I honestly don't feel storytelling with first-person camera and third-person camera. I don't think it's very different. It's just a difference between do you see your body or do you imagine your body? In terms of the choices and the stories that you tell, I don't think it matters very much. I think it comes down to that question. Do you want me to see and imagine the body of the character, like just see it? Do you have a vision of the character as a designer, or do you want me as the player to imagine it? And it's just an aesthetic choice. I don't think it affects storytelling very much.
所以 Jesse 的意思比较像是说，他觉得第一人称跟第三人称其实没有太大的差别，差别只是他觉得你能不能看到这个角色。那在其他的层面上，对于游戏设计或者是叙事设计来说，其实是没有太大的差别，因为你还是一样给玩家动机，你还是一样给他明确的选择跟目标，继续去走下去。那他只是觉得说，如果你有一个角色的话，你比较好让自己去投射。那如果没有的话，你比较需要让第一人称的人有更好的方法，让他故事可以投射到自己身上而已。对，他觉得没有什么太大的差别。So you're thinking about it's more like not much different. Just you can see the character or not. Just like because you can reflect yourself to that character. The rest is the same. Like how you making the rules, how you making the choice. So everything is the same.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting question. So, in your book, you specific like talking about imbalancing rules. For example, like a soul-like game is very imbalancing rule because people sometimes if the game is too hard, people will quit. But recently, like a soul-like game became a huge genre in the industry, especially
what
soul-like.
kind of game?
Soul-like.
I don't know what that
like
is.
a dark soul or
okay, like Dark Souls. Okay, understand.
Soul-like, yeah. So this became a huge genre right now. It's very popular, especially like recently. There's a most famous game like Elden Ring was out for test beta. So it was like it's a huge storm in the industry because that is became a huge genre right now.
Yeah.
What do you have any new opinion about this? Because when you wrote a book, that wasn't a huge genre. Because in back to the time, we can see people not really.
I guess I disagree. What I feel like is, if you look at when young people today look at old games, they say,
right.
"Oh, so hard! These games are so hard."
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
Castlevania.
Yeah. We went through a period where games got a lot easier, and then when things like Dark Souls show up, it's like it's a return to the past. So different people have different appetites for different level of challenge. Some people don't want the hard challenge. Some people really like that hard challenge to keep trying and trying and trying until you can do it. And so I don't. So I think it's a normal part of games that some people like a hard challenge, some people like a more medium challenge. That's all it is, I think.
OK， 他觉得其实这个是很正常的现象，但是他觉得说，像我们以前可能是比较久以前的游戏，譬如说80年代以前的游戏，其实以前游戏非常难，尤其是什么Castlevania 系列这种非常非常难的游戏。那他觉得反而是我们到了现在，越来越多游戏趋近于越来越简单。那只是说魂系游戏出现的时候，它等于是又把以前的那种难度的感觉带回到现在，所以他觉得其实就只是不同的族群在玩不同的游戏。有些对于喜欢高挑战的族群来说，魂系游戏非常适合他们。那有些他们比较没有办法接受这么高强度的人，他可能或许就会选择不去玩魂系，而是选择这一类的游戏。那对他自己而言，他可能就是比较持不同的意见而已。对 ，Yeah, I feel it's more like a trend. It's a trending. Like like you know, like a fashion, like oh this year, like 10 years ago, people was fashioning about a kind of clothing, but after 20 years later, this fashion is coming back.
I think that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is about the NFT. Is like also popular question. People was like, yeah, because recently there's a lot of gaming company announced that they are joining to NFT, like Sega. I think Sega's talked about that. Zynga hired a new VP about the blockchain technology, and also what we said. There's another one I forget. Oh, Ubisoft. Ubisoft was like people digging out their
very early
revenue report. Yeah, and they all into that NFT area. So, what's your thought about NFT? Or blockchain or blockchain?
Yeah, and NFT blockchain. I think it is mostly hype. I guess here's the question I have. What does NFT let games do that it couldn't already do? And no one has a good answer for this. So because this is not new. How long have we had blockchain? 10 years? And have games changed? No, not at all. Because no one has any good idea about how NFT is going to impact games in an important way. I think NFT could make some online game transactions a little more convenient, but it doesn't bring new interactions. So I think right now, I think NFT will be slightly useful for games in ways we don't really understand yet, but it's not going to bring any kind of revolution. It will bring some minor convenience with a few games. That's my opinion.
Okay, so let me just translate a little bit. 他觉得目前为止 NFT 或者 blockchain 对于游戏来说是一种比较像是炒作，就是比较像它是一种提高声浪的事情。那他反而想要问大家一个问题，就是说有什么事情是游戏可以做，然后 NFT 不能做，或者是说有什么事情是NFT 游戏却没有的，就是一定需要 NFT 进来游戏这个产业才能实现的事情。那他觉得目前没有，因为其实很多事情我们都已经有了，游戏也是持续发生。那 blockchain 这个技术也在业界发生，也是开始快10年了，但是游戏有任何大改变吗？他觉得也没有。那另外一个问题就是说，他觉得 NFT 这件事的确，或者是 blockchain 这件事的确是会让在游戏上的交易有更好的、更顺畅，但是其他以外，他并没有觉得有什么非常大的去改变整个游戏产业。对 ，Yeah, I feel it's the same. There's like I feel, but okay, but I have a following question about NFT or blockchain. Yeah. So, what if the blockchain combined with the metaverse? So, do you have any thought about or any opinion about that?
No, I mean it's just all.
It's the same.
I mean, all it is a way to save data. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a way to save data. We're already saving data. I'm this gets a little complicated, but companies want to be the ones who control saving data.
Yes.
NFT takes away that power. So that makes it so companies don't want NFT, and it doesn't help them, it hurts them. So they don't have a good reason to use it, because all it does is it makes their life harder, and it takes away their power, and it doesn't help anyone. So
yep.
I don't understand where the power comes from.
Okay. 我刚刚又问了一个 follow 就是问题，就是说如果 metaverse 跟 NFT 如果结合会有什么？那他是说，其实 NFT 其实或者是 blockchain 它只是一种储存 data 的技术，就是它只是去中心化的一种储存 data 技术。但是问题，游戏公司们他们最需要的都是把资料储存在同一个中心当中，因为他们需要控管所有的游戏资源。 资讯，才能好做应对嘛。那它问题就在于是，如果你今天用了 blockchain 这件事情，那你等于是把它游戏公司想要 focus 全部储存在一个地方的资讯全部分散掉了。那对于游戏公司来说，到底有什么好处？第一个，只会让他们控管事情越来越困难，然后越来越难去追踪事情。那到底这是个问题。我觉得他觉得这是一个非常complicated 的 question， 可以到很深的问题。那好，反正我们今天也不是讲这个，我们今天就只是刚好有人问到，所以我们就稍微聊一下这样子。我们可以到下一个问题。Okay, the next question is about when you developing a heavy narrative driven game, how do you define a vertical slide game? How do you define your vertical slide should be? Sorry, let me explain that. So vertical slide 是在业界当中我们常用到的一个专有名词，就是说，因为游戏就像一块饼 ，vertical slide 有点像是一刀把它切下去，然后我们那一刀下去等于是一个蛋糕，那个蛋糕会拥有全部的每一个 layer， 就是每一个东西，那每一个 layer 就代表是游戏的每一个层面，所以有点像是我们在做一个 prototype， 这个 prototype 包含了这一整个游戏主要全部的架构，对。那我们会叫它 vertical slide， 因为这个东西没有中文翻译。Sorry, I'll just explain vertical slide.
So yeah, the way you do it is you show what some moments of interaction feel like. That's all. You have to show what are the interactions going to be, and what will they feel like. Narrative games tend to be very they have very repetitive interactions, right? I make this conversation choice, and then this conversation choice, and this conversation choice, and they're different conversations, but all the choosing is the same, right? The interface is the same. So you want to show the interface, and you want to show what does an important moment in the narrative feel like. That's all.
OK， 他觉得呢，如果今天你要去做一个叙事游戏，比较强烈叙事游戏的vertical slide， 好像台湾比较会说 MVP 吧，就是 most valuable prototype 这个东西。那他会说你必须比较着重的是 moment to moment， 就是每一个时间点到每一个时间点中间，你所带给玩家的感觉跟主要的互动是什么。那他也提到说，其实叙事感很重的游戏呢，通常他们在互动上会比较重复性，而且比较单一性。就假设我们像 Detroit Became the Human， 它其实很多时间全部都是 QTE， 那它的互动其实非常简单。那反而你需要更琢磨的是，怎么让你在 pitch 当中知道说 ，OK， 这个是我的互动。那我要强调的是什么感觉？我带给玩家是什么样子的体验？大概是这个样子，你去做一个 vertical slide. So I was just talking about like Detroit, like you say, because the interaction is very repetitive and very simple sometimes. So like Detroit Become Human is like all the time QTE, but the big moment is like you can making choice that influence your future. So that I still remember when they show the trailer is the moment they show again, like they pick the trailer, they pick the answer, and they go this route, and they say, okay, we're gonna replay again, and they show on the stage, say, okay, we're gonna replay again, and choose the other choice, and that became the another outcome.
Yeah, that's a great vertical slice for that game. That's a good example.
Yeah, 所以我们刚刚说，就是像我刚刚记得他之前有讲，我们之前刚刚有讲到，就是像那个底特律变人这个游戏，它其实在他刚发表的时候，他的 trailer 就是非常 focus 在这件事情，因为他的互动从头到尾都是 QTE， 但是他在 presentation 的时候，大家可以等一下去 Google 出来这个影片，就是他第一次发表的时候，我很记得清楚，它是有一个线性，然后到了一个节点之后，它让你选择 A、B 两个东西，那一样是用 QTE 选择，但是你选了 A 之后，它会走向另外一个结局，然后在现场他就说好，我们重新来玩一次这个游戏。然后他选了另外一个结局，然后马上就变另外一个，所以他在表现的是说， 我的玩法很简单，就是 QTE，但是我可以让你有多重选择，让你有多重体验，所以那反而是一个 Jesse 说，那就是一个很好的 vertical slice。那我们来看下一题是什么 ？OK， let's say if you have more time, which part of the book you want to talk about more?
Oh,
this is the tough question. Every part you want to talk about more.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that. The book has a lot of different parts, and one thing I like is I talk to different people, and different people say, "Oh, this was my favorite part. This part really helped me. This part was very helpful to me." So
right.
It's different for every person what they need and what's going to be helpful for them. Yeah. I am working on a new book project now all about educational games, because that's something that I don't talk about very much in the original book. So I'm working with someone on a whole new book all about educational games.
他说其实蛮困难的。他刚刚前面想很久，大家可以看到。那他觉得说，因为他在写这本书的时候，其实他是跟很多不同的人聊过天。那每个人都会说他喜欢这本书的这个地方，那另外一个人喜欢另外一本书的这本书的另外一个地方。所以他其实在想，他很难去说他到底想要把哪个地方多写一点。那他现在正在写他第二本书，那第二本书是有关于教育游戏的部分。那它会是一个全新的东西，而且是在之前这本书没有提到的。那所以大家也可以期待一下。对 ，Actually, my favorite part of this book is about the beginning. Especially, I was in your class, and that was like you have to stand up and tell yourself like, "I'm a game designer. I'm a game designer. I'm a game designer." Actually, this part helps me a lot when I working in the industry, because sometimes when I have the challenge coming, and I have no experience about how can I solve that. But if you have to tell yourself like, I got this job, I'm a game designer, I'm able to fix this, I have to do it. Yeah. So I think that part really helps me all the way in my career. Actually.
Yeah, me too.
you still.
Oh yeah, definitely.
我刚刚讲一个蛮有趣的例子，就是我刚刚讲说我自己老板自己本身喜欢他书里的地方，就是在书的前面一开始，他有一个章节就是跟大家说，大家自己站起来，然后对着镜子说，我是一个游戏设计师，我是个游戏设计师，我是游戏设计师，这个桥段。那尤其是我上过他的课，因为他的课就是全班50几个同学站起来，然后就很像邪教这样 ，We are the game designer, we are the game designer 这样。对，那这个地方其实帮我很大一个，在我人生求职的路上帮助我很大，因为有时候其实我会碰到各型各样的问题，那有时候有些问题我并没有经验，但是我既然做了这个职位，我就会一直告诉我自己，我是一个游戏设计师，我有办法解决这件事情，所以我必须相信我自己，所以我才会一路走来，在业界中就是不断的提醒我自己，说我可以解决我现在手上，我可以成为一个设计师，我可以解决玩家需要的事情。Okay, the next question will be, okay, so this is more like for the newbie designer. So they were asking, what's your suggestion when the newbie game designer reading The Art of the Game Designer's book? I think this can be a two question, like what's your suggestion when they reading this book, and what's the suggestion afterward they can do, right?
I see.
I think they said totally different.
Yeah. I mean, so I think, so the book has no exercises. The book is just talking and thinking.
Yeah.
And it leaves the doing up to the reader. So the important part is that you go and make some games. So that's the thing to do as you go through the book, is to see what does it make you think of? What kind of games does it make you want to make? And that you start making some games. It's almost like reading a book about music is very different than making music. You can read all day, but eventually you have to make some music.
Yeah. 他说其实这本书其实没有告诉你怎么做太多，反而这本书是一个非常训练思维的书，教你如何做游戏，告诉你游戏是什么，告诉你游戏相关的很多理论跟知识。那他觉得最重要的事情是你必须去开始做游戏这件事，因为就像你去读乐理，你读懂了乐理，你知道五线谱是什么，但是你从来没有做过音乐，所以你也不知道音乐会是什么，或者是音乐会带给人什么样子的感觉，或者什么样子的音乐是什么样子的风格。那所以他比较建议是说，如果你是个新手设计师的话，你开始读这本书。那最重要的是你要动手去做，因为这本书当你在动手做的时候，其实你会不断反复去看这本书。对 ，Yeah, actually I have the same feeling like when I'm doing my own project or something. Sometimes I go back to refer the books because I have to go back and see something, and it's not just like, oh, I read it and I'm totally get it and just continue. Sometimes I need to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Next question. How you measure the learning performance from the game?
Oh, it's a good question. Wow.
You probably answer that in the next book.
Yes, that's true. But it's different. Different games are very different. But basically you just have to decide what is the change you're looking for. Because any game that tries to teach you something is trying to change you. And you have to look at, well, what change am I looking for? And then you have to find a way to measure the change. You want to test people before and then have them play, and then after, what kind of change has happened? And you want different changes with different games.
他说最重要的是你需要去知道你想要玩家改变的是什么事情。意思就是说，你去做一个 educational 的游戏，一定是希望玩家从某一个状态改变到某一个状态，比如说不会数学学会数学，或者是不会物理学会物理，或者是从任何东西，比如说不喜欢喝水变喜欢喝水这样子。那你必须去注意的事情是他这个改变怎么带上来的，或者是他有没有开始改变这件事情。那你需要去测量的是这两个之间的差距，就是有改跟没有改，或者是他有没有学习到。那这就是一个去观察学习成本最好的方法。那他说，当然他也在他的新书里面会提到，因为这个是比较有关教育游戏，就是学习游戏的内容。对，那大家可以赶快敲完，然后我再帮你跟他敲完。Do we have a more question? Okay. This is like a very technical question. It's like how you automatic adjust the difficulty in the game.
Oh. You have to be very careful when you do that.
他说对于这件事，你必须是非常非常小心去做这件事情。
Yeah, because it's easy to do it wrong. Because a game gives you a challenge, and if the challenge changes too much, it frustrates the player.
他说意思就是说这件事其实是要非常非常小心，因为如果你在自动修改难度这件事情没有做好的话，就会造成很大的问题。因为游戏本身是提供挑战给玩家，当你的玩家开始没有感受到这个挑战的时候，会失去他原本的用意。 This reminds me your chart, the flow channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's best to let the player make that choice. To let them decide when they're ready for a change in difficulty.
就是他其实说最好的方法就是让玩家决定什么时候是他们决定好要去接受新的挑战，而不是让自动难度去调整他什么时候该接受新的挑战或者是降低难度这样子。I think yes, I think this is the last question because we are kind of short in the time. I think Professor Dai want to say something. We want to have a question or want to say something.
For this question, Lucien, are you
我帮你
asking
翻译
me?
好。
好 ，OK。
好啊，我可以帮你。还是老师你可以自己，你也可以，我帮你好了。
我是有英文的 ，OK。
好啊，你問啊。
Okay. Thank you very much for just answer questions from the audience. The last question actually is my question for you. Based on your talk, the future character will have more narrative possibilities, right? It sounds very good. However, I wonder, just based on your elemental theory, the dynamics part and the emergent for the player is very important to play the game, right? So I wonder if the game, how can the designer to predict or to promise or control the emergent to the player while they playing the game, especially when the complex dynamics happen in playing the game. That's my question.
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I think this gets to the heart of what is going to be challenging about dynamic characters. Because when characters start to understand what we're saying, it's going to open up the many things that can happen in a game. And the more freedom that we give to a player, the harder game design can become. So what it means is game designers are going to need to get more artful and thoughtful. And part of it is going to be about using the characters themselves to guide the player in certain directions. In my book, I talk about the lens of collusion, where characters are partly being themselves, but they're also partly helping the game designer. And so I think a big part of the future is going to be designing characters that seem very real, but at the same time are actually doing the work of the game designer to make the player do what the designer wants the player to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me think about that. It's hard to translate. So it's more like indirect control.
Yes, it's indirect control through characters.
Yeah. So, just let me brief a little bit. So 他说，对于这个问题，其实非常重要，是在于是有关于动态角色的深度。但是这件事呢，如果真的成功了，它可以打开很多可能性在游戏当中。但是这件事会让游戏设计师变得非常难去设计整体的游戏，因为变得我们很难去掌控很多事情。但是我们需要去做的事情，有点像是说让这个动态的角色去引导玩家，设计师想要他做的事情。所以我们必须把很多 possibility 很多的可能性放在这个角色身上，让他去带领的玩家朝向我们要去的方向去。这个也蛮抽象的，但是我觉得大家可以去有机会回播的话，大家可以去重复听他几次他讲的意思，有点像是说我们要用一种非直觉性的引导， 那以前的引导很可能就是我们直接放一个目标在那，然后玩家就走过去，然后或者是 NPC 跟你说我需要10个木头，然后你就去砍10个木头。但是它可能会变成另外一种形式去告诉你我需要10根木头，或者是他会跟你说，哎，你知道森林里有什么东西？我家正好需要盖房子，那你就会去做这件事情。就是你需要把它转换成一个更深入的引导，而并非只是单纯的引导。I'm just saying probably will be different in the future, like not like current game. Like the NPC tells you, I want the 10 lumber, and you just go farm and 10 lumber and coming back. But in the future, probably they will tell you something, and you will figure out, oh yeah, you need a lumber. I need to figure out for you. Somehow, I need to go somewhere and put something for you, something like that.
I think that's right.
Yeah, this question, basically this question is based on your slides. Create a number 10, your slides. You mentioned about the elemental teacher, right? Especially, Jesse, you mentioned the technology. Because I'm a computer science guy, so we have more machine learning model to support this kind of immersion in the gameplay based on the technology. Yeah, that's my comment.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Machine learning is going to be more and more a part of game design.
Exactly. I have a thought when you're talking about the Mario game. I wonder in the future, would that Mario, like, when my son was playing the new Mario game, and he was, oh, you are son of the Lucien. I remember your dad did something very terrible in Sunshine Mario.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. I think that's all the question. Or do we have the next question from Professor Dan?
No.
我们还有下一个。
没有
下一个。老师，你有没有？老师还是你有想说什么？
哦，好，
我讲太多了。
没有。非常谢谢 Lucien 跟马龙来大力协助这个活动的举办。We do appreciate Jesse for his time to present a very good experience to sharing us. 非常谢谢他分享这么丰富的经验给我们。那因为刚开始我们串流做的因为环境的关系，请大家多多包涵。那再次谢谢Lucien跟马龙还有主办单位。那最后我们把那个最后的结语交给马龙来说几句话，谢谢。Hello， 世军，
嘿 ，Hello， 好，听到我声音吗？
有
，OK， 好，各位观众，不好意思，真的非常的抱歉，因为平常我们也没有真的在处理这一些直播的，这次办这个活动主要也是为了希望，以跟同学做交流为主，然后在一些因缘际会下就扩大了来主办。那最后来讲也是跟大家再次说明，很多我们原本的备案都是基于一般的活动的。它的人数来设定的，但是真的没有想到说大家的报名非常踊跃，最后直接是超过了1200位，所以各种原本所设定的直播的方式都没有办法进行，那最后只好用 Google Meet 去串YouTube 的方式，那最后也碰到了一些困难，这是跟大家说一下，非常的抱歉。可是这边我觉得也给我们相当多的一些经验。那最后要跟大家再说明一下，像这次的话也是很感谢大家出版帮我们去做各种的联系，然后 Indie的放肆大赏书法协会都有在推广上做了非常多的努力。我觉得这2年来我看到是非常的感动，就是感觉到说在游戏的推广还有研发经验的分享上，有各种的单位都非常积极努力的在推广。我也相信说接下来台湾的游戏业界可以越来越好。那最后再跟大家说一下抱歉，因为各种技术的原因，我们其实时间有所延误。大家最后在刚才 share 的那个连结上，我这边有看到后台有看到非常多的朋友有在提供了一些问题。那我相信有一部分的问题，其实在前面的问题都已经有涵盖到了，包含像 Multiverse， 然后包含像NFT， 那还有包含像是女性角色的议题。那但是还有一些可能没有提到的，由于时间的关系，我们不方便再耽误 Jesse 教授太多的时间，已经超过原定时间半小时了，所以我们就先到这边。 剩下的问题能够再用什么样的方式，会不会进行进一步的解答，我们会在后续去做讨论。但是这边也先跟各位说一下抱歉，聊天室的讯息我们都有看到，也感谢大家的鼓励跟支持。那我们就今天的活动就到这边结束喽。
好，谢谢。Welcome to Taiwan, Jesse.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right,
Okay, have a good day.